right, hello, and hello to everybody tuning in online as well. I'm Amrita Gurney. I'm the head of marketing at Float, and I wanted to welcome everyone here. I know we don't get to do these face-to-face events that often, but it's so nice to meet people in person. We've heard your names and heard your stories, and thank you so much for taking time out of your week to come and join us today. So I wanted to also just let people know that there's a lot of floaters in the room, so you'll probably see some of us with our black shirts on, and other folks, if you can just wave so people know who you are, please say hello. We've got people from pretty much every team joining us today. So we're going to kick things off today with Float founder and CEO Rob Khazzam, and then he's going to be joined by two fantastic Canadian finance leaders, Stephen Vescio from BenchSci and Ryan Levenberg from Hi Mama, and they're going to be here for a Q&A, so get your questions ready. I know it's going to be a really great conversation. After that, we'll wrap up in about an hour, and then for those who are here in person, we'll have an opportunity to continue the conversation, grab some food. And I also just wanted to say it's kind of a nice coincidence that our AV team are also Float customers. So shout out to Crimson Fish for making everything run smoothly today. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Rob.
Can folks move in? I feel like we've got stadium seating that's available, and we don't get together that often, so it'll be good to bring people together. So as Amrita mentioned, I'm Rob. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Float. Really excited to have you all here. It's only been 2 years building Float, but it feels like a lot longer than that. We've had some amazing experiences working with many of you, and we definitely wouldn't be here without you. So today I'll walk through a bit about what we've been working on and some of the products we've been launching, and some great customer stories from folks that are here. But before I do that, I thought I would start with who we are and what our values are and really what we stand for. Before I do that, if you could indulge me, who works or has worked for a company with a mission that they are passionate about and helps get them out of bed every day? Who's got one there comfortable sharing? I'll repeat it back to the people online, but would love to hear what gets you out of bed every day. There's no wrong answers. Go ahead. Cataloging the world in virtual reality. Awesome. Which company is that? Odyssey 38. Awesome. Who else? What's a mission you're excited about? There's great missions in the room. I know it. I'm going to start calling people out. Mike, go for it. Well, Mike's on the Float team, so don't spoil our mission. But anyone else? Go ahead.
Helping people cross borders.
Helping people cross borders. What company? Sherpa. Awesome. This for me is really, really important in what we're all about. Finance software is about much more than transaction coding and accounting. And for me, my story with Float and our mission really started with a trip to Romania in 2015. And that really is how the co-founders of Float came up with this idea. So in 2015, I had left Canada. I was working in finance, and I had a dream of one day leading a business, and I knew I wouldn't get that experience working for a private equity fund. And so I left and joined Uber. And Uber had this incredibly motivating, exciting mission, which at the time was to deliver transportation as reliable as running water everywhere and for everyone. And when you joined Uber, that was held up as like, this is why you are here. And I was on the launch team, and so our job was the anywhere part. We're going to bring Uber all over the world into these new markets. And so 6 months into the job in 2015, I had gained a lot of weight and had eaten a lot of pierogies and had a really, really interesting time launching Uber in these different markets. But I had a real problem, and I was sitting in the Hyatt. I remember it like yesterday. 3 days before launch. Seems like a really sexy thing. You're launching Uber in a new market. But at the time, delivering on that mission meant essentially getting 1,000 iPhones, cables, and phone holsters into the hands of 1,000 people in Bucharest who were going to be driving for Uber 3 days later. And my problem was I didn't have a way to pay for those things. So here I am, I'm in Romania. I don't speak the local language. I don't have any local cards. I don't have any local accounts. And I'm sitting with our team. We've got a real problem. We can't pay for it. Our finance team in San Francisco, they don't have any of the vendors in Romania in their system. So the shipping company can't get paid, won't release the funds. And we stayed up overnight and we found a way to get enough money out of our team and their families' accounts and my personal Amex to buy all this stuff, and we got the launch done. But it culminated in one of the largest expense reports in the company's history, which was a fun conversation for me to have with my boss. But it really dawned on me, I've been sent to Romania to launch Uber in this market, but in the final hours, this is what it's come down to. Like, how do we pay for this stuff? And I remember that expense report being incredibly stressful because shelling out that much money on a personal card and not getting reimbursed is not a fun experience. So, fast forward that experience to 21, I met my co-founders, Griffin and Ruslan, and they were already deeply embedded in this problem. And they showed me this product, and it was a product that was, I need to spend money on something, I'm gonna message my manager in Slack, and they're gonna click approve, and it's gonna issue me a single use card. And I remember thinking, I wish I had that that night in Romania. And Griffin and Ruslan described a problem that they experienced working for companies themselves, where they as employees had to go shell out money, didn't have the means they could to organize things and felt bogged down. And they dared to dream to do something better. And so we spent a lot of time together in early 21 meeting great Canadian companies, great founders, many people in this room. And what we took away was there is incredible ambition in the Canadian market. It's really overlooked. There are massive, ambitious, and really hardworking teams here. But the tools that we need to be successful just don't exist. They're really, really not here. And time again, what we essentially came across is a situation where business spending is really complicated. So finance teams don't have the software tools they need. They're often legacy. If they are new, they're often not localized for the Canadian market. Who loves the Canadian banks? Raise your hands. Small clap, yeah. The Canadian banks, they're just not there for us when we need them. And when they do, the tools and the technology and the software and the experiences are just not there. And I remember distinctly, my friend Dan Park, who runs Clutch, said to me as an early customer of Float, I said, how challenging is this for you? And he says, Rob, it's hard enough to spend the money we already have in our bank account. That actually takes so long. And so that really dawned on us that our mission was really clear. We want to simplify spending for companies and teams. Because we believe that by building the modern platform for the modern finance team, we can empower this next great wave of entrepreneurs and businesses to achieve really, really great results. And that's what it's all about. I don't think anyone in the companies they work for signed up for necessarily all of the really difficult parts of their job. It's important to get done, but we sign up for how do we build a great product? How do we recruit great people? How do we expand internationally? And so for us, it's really about building that modern platform as a way to empower all of you. And finally, in how we've built the team and the product is by Canadians for Canadians, but we've tried really, really hard to inject modern, world-class international standards. And for me, that was something I took away from Uber. We've got lots of people here from Shopify and lots of different companies to bring that really, really high standard to the Canadian market, which we know we can do, but is sometimes lacking, I think, here. So over the last 2 years, we have been really fortunate to grow a lot, and none of it would have been possible without any of you. We've got a long, long way to go. But today we serve over 3,000 companies across Canada. We'll share 2 of them with you, but some of the most exciting companies in Canada. Over 200,000 transactions now are taking place on Float. And I hope and believe that some of those transactions, hopefully many of them are better experiences than the transactions happening outside of Float. And we've seen a ton of growth in transaction volumes over the last couple of years. But really the best part for us is the teams that we work with here. We know most of the customers on Float personally, and they're some of the most exciting companies in the country. So excited to tell you about 2 of them. One of them is Xanadu. Andrew Brock is in here somewhere. Andrew, good to see you. Andrew is the head of finance at Xanadu. This is one of the most exciting, inspiring companies that we've come across. They are a huge player and a very exciting player in the quantum computing space. And their mission is to make quantum computing accessible to everyone, everywhere. And they were looking for a tool with a team of 170 or so people to, like I described, empower people, empower their technicians, empower their development teams to build without giving up control. How do you do that across cities and teams and different locations? And so they've now got 170 employees onboarded onto Float. And a couple of the ways that they're solving some of their spending challenges, I thought I'd walk through with you. One is using our product team management. So when we first launched Float, we just had cards, and anyone got a card. And for the finance teams in the room, I think that very, very quickly became very overwhelming. And so Xanadu has taken advantage of this team management product. You can recognize we have employees that work on different teams, different managers, different job descriptions, and we can set policies that make sense for those teams. Not a one-size-fits-all approach. So a lab technician buying equipment, hardware equipment, is going to have very different submission policies and receipt requirements than maybe someone on your marketing team running a digital ad campaign. We've heard loud and clear that empowering teams sometimes has meant giving them a lot of ways to spend, a lot of cards, and that can create anxiety. I know I've had that feeling. At some point last year, we realized we've got about 50 people in the company, but we've got a lot more than 50 cards floating around. And so we heard a request, can we build a better cards product that puts us in control, empowers people on the front lines, but doesn't give them the full keys to the bank account. And so our product team worked really hard and launched what we really believe is the most innovative corporate card product in Canada now, which basically allows you to have multiple limits on one card. So instead of having a card for Jamie for digital spending and a card for him for monthly team spending, you can attach multiple limits, multiple categories of spending to a single card. And so Xanadu has distributed cards to their teams. It has the flexibility to say, this card on food transacts at this level, but on travel and entertainment, it transacts on a different level. And that's really, really important, especially in this age of economic austerity, I would say, different economic climate than we've obviously been in. And then lastly, you can use category restrictions to actually set where your team can spend. So instead of having a limit of $1,000, you can go transact wherever you want. You can go to the Gucci store, the Apple store, or to a mall. You want to be sure that your team is spending on what they're meant to be spending. And so you can actually set approved categories and limit card transactions to just that category. So you have the benefit of decentralized empowerment, but again, without giving up control. And obviously, this means that when you have your teams out spending, hopefully our float cards will work for them, and we believe they will. But if they don't, hopefully it's because you've asked them not to spend somewhere, and perhaps they've tried to, or perhaps they weren't sure that they were able to. And those card transactions will actually get blocked if they're out of policy. One of the use cases we've heard a lot about that we have not previously had a product offering for you on is we still have employees who have to spend out of pocket. And out-of-pocket reimbursements is a huge challenge. There's a payroll consequence. There's an expense report consequence. And so I'm really excited to announce that we are launching a personal reimbursements product. It will launch very, very soon. And this will give you the ability in Float with the same team management experiences, same approval policies, same receipt collection, to have the ability to reimburse your employees for out-of-pocket expenses all in one place, which I think hopefully is a great sense of calm, given that there are a lot of finance tools already out there that you're having to maintain. Who recognizes these exchanges? Has anyone had these exchanges with your team members about receipts, invoices? Where did you spend? I'm missing details for the June 12th offsite, anything like this? I see like nodding faces in the crowd. We hear a lot about this. We've seen a lot of this ourselves. As a part of our employee onboarding, we make all new floaters work with our finance team to close the books. They're often the ones chasing me for receipts that I haven't uploaded. But we did launch a lot here to help streamline this, and receipt capture through SMS is probably the best example of that. So every time a user on Float spends money, they're going to get a text message, have the opportunity in the moment to reply, we'll scan the receipt, attach it to the transaction. So hopefully you don't have to do that at month end. This is the visualization of that if you haven't seen it, but hopefully people are already using this functionality, which was a huge milestone for us and something that people talk to us about every day. BenchSci, talk about big missions and big visions. Stephen from BenchSci, the head of finance there, has been a critical partner to us and a great example of how we've built really closely with partners. BenchSci's vision is to help make scientists breakthroughs and get treatments to patients much faster. So a really, really big mission. The business has grown tremendously over the last couple of years. I believe it's now around 500 people. They're truly trying to change the world. And we've truly been trying to keep up with them as they change the world and grow in scale and complexity. So their team has grown quite a bit. They just raised their Series D, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, which was a really, really big and exciting announcement. And they've issued cards to every single one of their employees, which is actually quite rare. Most of our customers are not doing that. BenchSci has gone a step further and actually done that. They're using cards issued to all of their team members, but have really been thoughtful about categorizing them, giving them the approvals they need in advance. And they've worked really closely with us on some new accounting automation capabilities. A couple of the ones that have come to market lately that I think you'd be excited about. One is transaction splits. We heard from everyone this past year, transactions need to be broken down. We've got multiple categories of transactions that often get lumped together, and it makes it really, really hard to do reporting and analysis later. We launched the ability to split transactions into two. Transaction rules. We've got a lot of power users on Float. I think everyone in finance is a power user of Microsoft Excel and G Sheets and now Float. We launched transaction rules to allow you to set custom rules by vendor, by type of transaction, to allow you to say, what types of receipts do I want from my employees, what GL codes should be available to them, and how should we handle tax treatment. And then lastly is advanced tax handling. So the ability to actually track multiple line items of tax on a line item by line item basis for each transaction. We've learned a lot about QST and GST and HST and all the STs in Canada, and handling that has been really, really huge for us. And then lastly, and this is a really, really exciting announcement for us that's many, many, many months overdue, is relaunching our month-end accounting hub experience. If you work in finance and you use Float, month-end is the critical experience that you're trying to nail. We've got to get all of these transactions into our GL, and we need to feel confident about them and make sure that they're categorized correctly. This is the culmination of a year-long of feedback that we've received. And we've added a ton of powerful workflows into this. Things like inline receipt preview, bulk transaction editing. We've now got customers doing tens of thousands of transactions on Float that previously had to click through page by page. We've launched infinite scrolling, so you can get through those endlessly until you get to the bottom. And a lot of really, really powerful sorting and filtering capabilities where you can see all of that by team, by user, by GL code. And this really helps customers close their books a lot faster, which again, something we're working hard to keep up with as all of you are growing your businesses. And then lastly, we talked a lot about control on month end. Who's thinking about saving money right now? Reducing spending? Who's having a hard time figuring out where to cut spending? I know we are from time to time. It's not easy. Everyone wants to reduce spending. I think we all know that, especially in this climate. It's really, really hard to figure out where to do that, especially when your accounting data is spread out across a lot of different places. And so it's a really big challenge, and we've been trying to work on ways to help make it easier for you. And so we launched our first reporting capabilities into our product to make data much more accessible. Being able to filter and see spending by category, by merchant, by user, by teams, see how that's changed month over month. And then go a step further and actually be able to drill into that transaction data all the way down to the transaction level. So instead of saying we spent $127,000 on subscription spending, you can actually see every single line item, who the spenders were, what the receipts were, and be able to see all of that in one place. We've got a lot more work to do here. There's a lot more that can be built, but we're also really excited about launching our first insights product. So instead of putting the burden on all of you to find where you can save money, actually showing you personalized insights about where you're spending more money, where you might have duplicate subscriptions, where you might have duplicate vendors. And this is really for us just the beginning. Coming into the second half of this year, we're going to be investing a lot more product resources into driving savings and insights for customers. Has anyone seen this before? Not yet? Check it out. It's in the product, and there's more coming. So we're really proud about how far we've come and how much innovation is being done together with all of you, but there's a lot more work for us to do. And I just want to thank you all for the work you've taken. We get loads and loads of feedback. We're in Slack groups with many of you. You do design reviews with us before we launch products. This, to me, is what it really means to be a Canadian business serving Canadian businesses. And we definitely encourage you to keep giving us that feedback because we've got a lot more to build. And so our vision for the future and what we hope, 5 years, 10 years looking back, is that we have built a platform where you can do all the payments. You can process all the bills that you've got in one place, and we've given you great software and automations that give you the control and savings and insights you all need to do your job, and hopefully feel a lot more empowered. So we have big plans to transform finance in Canada, and I would bring back to where we started, which is the mission. Why are we all here? What do you all come to work to do? We want to build that platform for you that helps you go achieve your wildest dreams and get your jobs done and do a great job of it without being bogged down by all the bureaucracy and cumbersome processes that often are in the way when it comes to investing in a business. So thanks everyone for being here on the journey with us, and looking forward to doing our panel and Q&A now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So we'll ask Ryan and Stephen to come up and get ready. We'll just take about 60 seconds, so quick bio break, but we're going to get ready to go.
revolutionize and move a lot of the childcare facilities that are on a kind of pen and paper into a little bit more of a software world.
Hi everyone, my name's Steven. I'm the Director of Finance at BenchSci, which was one of the case studies you went through there. I had no idea you were going to do that, by the way. Our mission, actually we use AI and machine learning to accelerate preclinical research and development. Of the top pharmaceutical companies in the world right now, over 75% of them are currently served by us. So not only are we excited by our mission, but they are too. And I don't even like calling them customers, they're really partners in our mission. Yeah.
That's super exciting. Tell us a bit about what your teams look like today. How big is the team? What are the sort of key functions? And you know, where are folks located? Are they across the country, globally, in person, remote?
Sure. We're split pretty traditionally. We have about 6 people on the corporate accounting side and about 2 people right now on the FP&A side. And we have pretty traditional controller, kind of senior financial analyst, and then a couple of bookkeepers helping us out.
Nice.
Yeah, so for context, the whole company has grown from 200 to I think over 400 in the last 12 to 18 months. And our team on the finance team is about 10 right now. We try and keep it really lean because it's easier because they're the best of the best. Right now I think it's 5 in accounting and financial reporting, 2 in FP&A, 1 in payroll, and then myself and the CFO. And we wear a lot of hats, so there's lots of informal functions that we all share in, like treasury and AR, et cetera.
It's been a challenging year for a lot of companies. Everyone's operating a little bit differently. What's changed for you and the finance team as a result of the sort of economic downturn and changing environment?
Sure, yeah. I'll be honest, not much has changed. I think that's one of the things we pride ourselves on is we've had this discipline through exuberant times right now. So we have discipline in our mission, we have discipline in our management. So not really much has changed. Like obviously there's, you mentioned it, the austerity. So there's a little bit of that for sure. Like efficiency and the effectiveness of spend are always top of mind, but even more so now.
Yeah, Hi Mama is probably a little bit in an earlier stage from a scaling perspective. So we are, I'm working on building out our kind of core finance team. So the investments that we're making are more foundational in nature. And from an economic perspective, Hi Mama was certainly impacted from if I think back to COVID, I wasn't there, but sort of like what happened from a childcare industry in terms of everything being shut down and everything kind of coming back after. We're still not at kind of a core 100% in terms of occupancy across the board in Canada and the US. So that certainly affected things from a business perspective, but from a company perspective, they took a pretty significant round of funding in late 2021, and so we're busy kind of building the foundation across the business to make sure that we can support all the scale.
How do you think about empowerment in a company? There's a hard line we tend to feel where you have a balance of financial control while enabling the builders in the business to do their jobs. How do you think about that today as you run a function that touches employee spending, leader spending, and enablement? Is there a philosophy?
For me, it starts with business partnership. I think at first, if I think about like just how I engage with folks in the business, it's about establishing that ultimate partnership and understanding of like how we are going to work together. Obviously, the policies and stuff kind of follow. When I got there was not a formal kind of T&E policy. We had to put something like that in place. There's probably variations of best practice when it comes to those types of policies. But for me, it's about giving guiding principles rather than specific spending. If someone's going on a trip, it's not, you can spend this much on breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Specifically, it's like you have this amount for the day. And I think that kind of is probably more in line with, a little bit more from a judgment perspective. So giving people flexibility where possible.
Yeah. And is that at all levels of the organization, or is it like a certain level of seniority? How do you filter that? Because it's a hard thing sometimes.
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's kind of like across the board, yeah.
Yeah, we do things very similarly to what Ryan mentioned. So we have, I think one of our skills is our bottoms-up budgeting process we have. So we're really partnering with the teams to determine what their goals and objectives are, obviously within the broader mission. Because we're of the guiding principle that the teams know how to achieve their goals and objectives better than the finance team does, as much as some finance folks think they know better. So we work with them to determine what their goals are, and then we empower them with the resources they need. And then also with the expense policies, we have guiding principles there because we have folks who are maybe newer in their careers and they don't really know what an appropriate business expense is. So we have some guidance there, but in general, we're just empowering them to spend to achieve their goals.
Nice. Expense policies or expense policies are a hot topic at Float. We talk about them a lot. Do you have an expense policy, and how long is it?
Good question. We do have an expense policy because we just rolled it out. I'm going to go with 6 pages.
6 pages.
6 pages.
Okay.
I'm going to say we don't have an expense policy, but I think there are some guidelines that we have, again, on what is appropriate spend. But we have this framework within our culture called freedom and responsibility, and we didn't invent this. It was coined, I think, at Netflix. You can read about it in a book called No Rules Rules. It was co-written by Reed Hastings, the founder and chairman, obviously. So, and we also have the former chief talent officer from Netflix as an advisor. Her name's Jessica Neal. She's been great. And in this, we empower people to spend what they think is appropriate, but on the responsibility side of that equation, they also own their decisions and they're responsible for those decisions. So it's a little bit of give and take there.
What does that mean for you? So when you empower people to spend and you say they own the responsibility, where does the rubber meet the road for you?
Yeah. So it's not a free-for-all, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There's definitely some controls and guardrails for some of the larger spend. I think really what guides it is kind of like using best judgment. And if someone's not using their best judgment and it is, say, egregious, I mean, that's going to be a problem. So generally, we're trusting our folks to spend it as if it's their own money, realistically. And if they have any questions, they just ask us. So they're not going out and spending and then going, oh, I didn't know.
And is that a trust and verify model? So you'll trust and then look at some sliver of transactions, or do you just leave it?
Yeah, so we're trust and verify for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
I talked a bunch about oversight and control. It's something a lot of customers talk to us about. We love the idea of empowerment, but as a finance team, we're responsible. We need to have oversight. How are you approaching that today, whether with Float or elsewhere, and what are the needs and desires you have as you look for the year ahead?
I think we take a pretty simple approach, which is sort of like bottoms-up forecasting. Like, this is your kind of budget for the year across these different line items. This is what we expect you to spend in these areas, or this is what we would, let you know that you have access to. And then from a sort of controls perspective, it's that back and forth, like monthly conversation. We do a lot of, we spend a lot of time with leaders in the business, showing them the results, asking them, what's driving this kind of overspend here or underspend here, and then we're kind of fine-tuning it. So that's the sort of approach we take. It's a much smaller team. We're about, maybe a third of the size of 500 right now. So we have that ability. I think as you grow, you get into different problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the oversight, we have our monthly processes related to financial reporting and FP&A. And obviously in your case study there about us giving everyone cards, the dashboarding and insights from the Float stuff is very important to us. We wouldn't be able to keep track of that if it was on any other card platform.
Yeah, tell me a bit about that. I mentioned it's great to see customers using Float across the business, but lots of customers aren't ready for that. You've been pretty forward-thinking here and rolled it out across the whole team. What was that like? What did you have to do to set that up across the team, and how did you set expectations and do training for people? How did that work?
So we got everyone in a room and we just threw all the cards in the all
and they all have different limits, so they catch a card with a higher limit.
So we started everyone off with a $1,000 limit, and the goal of that was really, and this was before you had the personal reimbursements functionality. So really the goal was to avoid people from having to fill out expense reports, right? They can go in any shop anywhere in the world that they're paying for something, and an incidental can go on the card, meals and entertainment can go on the card, so they're not fronting their own money too, because it can be annoying to wait like 2 to 4 weeks for a payroll to get reimbursed. So just that was the main goal, I think, in giving everyone a card, and surprising to me at least, everyone has used it appropriately. We haven't really had an incident where anyone's going out and spending money on something they shouldn't. Yeah.
Using the category blocking?
Not as well as we should, I think, right now.
Yeah. You're both really well known in the finance community. I'd consider you both like very influential early adopters of technology, and Ryan, you've got a really popular Slack community that I think a lot of folks know about. Why is community important to you, and what's the opportunity there that you think is relevant for Canadian finance professionals?
Yeah, it's something that I'm very passionate about. I kind of somehow became close to the center of a Toronto finance community maybe about 7 or 8 years ago when I joined Q4. Straight out of the firm, had no really idea what I was doing. You know, I don't think Daryl should have trusted me back then to be head finance. Thank God he did. It was a great journey with him. Learned a lot of failures, but what I really recognized, and a lot of what my peers recognized, is that we just needed to lean on each other. And what started out as a small group of 3 or 4 finance folks in a room having pizza and beers kind of once a month turned into a community of kind of over 250 today, and now moving that community into a kind of a more formal home and trying to add more value to that. But the sort of kernel of it is always around networking, leaning on your peers, getting advice, because it's something that I've been able to kind of benefit from, and I think a lot of us have as well.
Yeah. I like to joke that the main benefit is we don't overspend on anything, because we just go to another company and ask, hey, our colleague, like, hey, how much you spend on this? Oh, is it more or less than what we're paying? So I think, that we did that last week actually. Not even how much we're paying, but just their experience with whatever software we were looking to obtain. I'm sure folks do that with Float as well, and I'm only saying good things.
You guys come up quite a bit in the community.
Yeah. Well, and SaaS and contracts and big spending, benchmarking is a big opportunity that we're thinking about now. And I know you're kind of like in the process of rolling out Float now at Hi Mama. As you think about the 6-12 months ahead, what are the most important things that you feel finance teams are probably focused on, and how can a company like Float help empower you?
Something specific, I think, for us is, like, as part of the rollout, is just getting everything off of everything else and onto one system. You sort of knock the Canadian infrastructure that exists today around reporting and access, and it's not where it should be. It's not what sort of makes our lives easy and our team's lives. So just, I think over the next little while for us specifically is being able to move everything over, have one centralized spot, and then we can actually get the benefit of some of these tools, because if you're only looking at half the picture, you're not going to be able to know exactly what's going on.
Yeah. So consolidating everything in one place is
Yeah.
a big win. Yeah.
I think for us, it's definitely the efficiency of some of the spend and the value generation we can get from that spend, because I think, as you mentioned, we just raised our Series D round, and I think to a lot of folks that are not in the finance team, they see that and they go, oh, okay, unlimited money to spend on whatever I need to spend on, and that's not the case. So really it is the effectiveness of spend and the value that can be generated. And some of the value, it's really easy to see it on a sales team, right? The value is so close to the sales team, but there's so much value that comes from other teams, like culture and engineering, that we're working on trying to identify what value we're generating there that contributes to the overall mission we're trying to accomplish.
Nice.
Yeah.
Last question, have to ask, you touched on it. BenchSci raised a really big Series D. It's a huge accomplishment in any market, but in this market, it's a great one. How did that go? What can you share about how to get a Series D done in June of 2023?
Well, fortunately, our CEO, Laurent, he just posted a full blog post on his LinkedIn, and it should be on our website, where you can read step by step how to do it. No, really, it's really detailed. It's a great write-up. So I would recommend definitely taking a look at that. On the finance side, our involvement mostly revolves around modeling the future use of those resources, giving an account of what our track record has been, which has been great, obviously, and my favorite part, which is the due diligence. And for those who don't know, I'm being sarcastic. Due diligence is awesome.
How long did it take?
So they wanted to close around very quickly, so this one took a couple weeks. And it also helps that we are perfect, so there's nothing
under the hood.
Exactly.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not sure if we have time for audience questions. I don't think. Well, we do? Yeah?
Yeah, I think we do have time for questions. Is my mic okay? Yeah, so why don't we, thank you first of all, Ryan and Stephen.
Thanks a lot for joining us.
So yeah, we can take some time for audience questions. If anyone has one, I'll just come over with my mic. Who would like to start? People are feeling shy today.
We got everything out.
It's like those company
Okay,
all
let me get one question from Mike.
Thanks, guys. That was really great. Curious to hear from both of you, as a non-finance person myself, what would you say is the biggest misconception among your colleagues and other teams in your organizations about the finance function as a whole?
I really want to make a joke here about how, I mean, there's some engineering folks who think that we don't know how engineering works and that they can, say things a certain way. Especially usually the switch from like co-location hosting to like cloud hosting. We will do the math on whether it makes financial sense to make that switch. But I think really the misconception I see the most often is that we're gatekeepers for things. Or that we want the confrontation to like safeguard spend, and that's definitely not the case. I'm actually on the further end of the spectrum where I want to give everyone exactly what they need, so then there's no excuse that they didn't have the resources to go out and do what they needed to do.
I think the modern finance leader is much more of a business partner today than a gatekeeper or someone in a corner preparing financial statements. The training, the pedigree, what's available, the networks, that's setting up finance folks, especially in kind of startup, high growth tech organizations, to be a much more of a partner enabling strategy and operations rather than just providing a set of financials at the end of the month. So we can do a lot more, and I think you're seeing that. I think you're seeing a lot more finance people move into very different roles in the organization, whereas maybe a couple of years ago that wasn't the case.
Anyone else? Okay, yep, one more question here.
I love that point about gatekeeper versus partner. What's the best way to become that business partner? Is it tooling? Is it expertise? Is it about empowering your team to think differently? Like, what comes to mind when you think about business partnership as a finance leader?
For me, it's really about understanding who I'm talking to and what their objectives and goals are and what makes them successful. Enabling them to be successful will ultimately make me, the team, and the company successful. And so, I stress to my team all the time that, we're problem solvers. We're not going to put up, blocks or stuff like that. Like, what are we trying to do together here? And can we help you run analysis? Can we help you speak to a vendor? Can we help you in a negotiation? Whatever that thing may be, like the skill set of the modern finance person, I think today is a lot more than it kind of used to be, or the sort of access that we used to get. So that's sort of my approach to it.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'd definitely echo everything Ryan's saying there. Definitely coming from it with an approach of seeking to understand first, instead of passing judgment without getting full information. So really, at the beginning, for me at least, it's usually just a matter of getting as much information as possible about what the situation is or what the needs are, and then making decisions or working together after that.
Anyone else?
Hi, Kyle Collier, founder of Phase, big, huge Float card fan. Been here since the inception. How did you guys get your first early traction? I'm pretty sure we were one of the first companies as we were there, and there was no features.
Well, I'm staring off to the side at Ruslan, our co-founder, who should be up here. Without him and Griffin, none of this would be here. But when I met them, they had done a great job of building organic relationships with a handful of customers, and they truthfully knocked on a lot of doors and said, "Hey, we're Waterloo grads. We're building in this space. We're not trying to sell you anything. We just literally want to understand what's a 10x product experience we could build for you." And funny enough, a bunch of early Float investors and advisors were people they approached who said, "Oh, we like what you're doing. We like how genuine you are." And that's how it started. So there was 2 or 3 customers, then 4 or 5, then 10. And I think the common thing often was, your product's not great yet, but it's getting better every month. And I see that there's a, and this is what startups are all about. It's all iterative. And so it really started by just knocking on the doors of people they've met on LinkedIn or through their network and thought, if we build a product that this person is going to love, a lot of people will probably love it. That was really what it was.
I think it took Ruslan and Sean maybe like 6 months of me saying you guys aren't ready for us.
Yeah, that's a common that's a common thing.
12 months it took? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We have a question from the live stream audience. There's a question from Daisy on what do you see as some of the challenges in the phase between Series D and IPO? I know, Ryan, you've been through that process. Stephen, you're in that phase right now. What does that feel like? What are some of the challenges that come up during this stage?
I'm interested in that question too, right?
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. I mean, there's probably a couple different ways to approach it, but thinking about it from like a finance team perspective, given sort of where we are in the conversation today, there's a lot of materials available out there once you're starting to think about, what does it look like to IPO. I spent a tremendous amount of time sort of pulling all the kind of big four accounting firm stuff, all the lawyers, all of my network to just understand like what does IPO readiness look like. That creates a roadmap that should be 18 months. We did it a little bit sooner, but I had sort of in the background been making a lot of proactive investments around people, processes, and systems. You need commitment from the board and the CEO, I think, to be able to deploy that capital. 10 people on 500 is really lean. But if you can run that and you have all the systems set up and everything talks to each other, then phenomenal. We weren't that fortunate. We were in and around 500 when we went public at Q4, but we probably had a team of about 19 people that grew from maybe 12 to 19 over the course of about 6 months to get ready for that process. So that's, a little bit of that flavor, I guess.
How much faster than 18 months was it?
From the moment that we decided, we had a little bit of a start-stop. So I would say that we were ready probably within 7.
7 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Okay, I will ask one last question. Sorry, I know I'm not always in the right spot, but on the topic of technology, what is something that's still a real headache for you that you wish a tool would solve?
AI closing the month end completely on its own without us doing anything. I'm sure it's possible and it's coming. I think some of the things related to FP&A could be improved quite a bit, and you do see a lot of new software coming through the pipeline in the past 2 years to help solve for that. Part of the problem is I think a lot of folks haven't arrived on what best practices in FP&A look like. Like if you go online and you search what the best practices are for accounting and financial reporting, they're there, and there's not really a lot of room for any changes there. But for FP&A, I think there's a lot of room for some software to come out, and to be fair, a lot has come out. So I think one of the ones I saw recently that just raised around was one called Mosaic. So I'm excited about what all the FP&A platforms can do.
Yeah, there's probably a couple. I mean, there's a pretty large finance tech stack. Sounds like you guys are working your way through a specific portion of it. I would, be really interested to see just more of a consolidation, more native applications, less of like being able to kind of API or integrate through all these different things. And I think the kind of ultimate would be finding a solution that you can kind of start with. So if I think about like a general ledger, so like if you sign up for QuickBooks and Xero, but that doesn't necessarily scale with the business. There's a point where like Xero and QuickBooks just does not work, multiple entities, consolidation, everything else that you're kind of managing. So something that sort of takes a company maybe a little bit further along without having to reset all those things every couple of years.
Excellent. Our product team is taking notes. So with that, I think I will wrap things up. So thank you again so much to both Stephen and Ryan for joining, and for everybody who came out. Those who are watching on the live stream, you may not know there's actually a tornado warning in Toronto, so you're all very committed people to come out tonight. Hope you all make it home safely. Please stick around, grab a drink, grab some food, meet each other. That's a big part of the reason why we're all together here in person, is as much to connect our customers with each other as it is to meet us. And hope you have a great rest of your evening, and look forward to seeing you at our next event.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.